Vegan, keto, Mediterranean, low carb, carnivore. You probably think you've heard of all the popular diets, right? Well, what about the whole food plant-based diet? Let's talk about that. How's it going, guys? My name's Richie Kirwan, and today we're going to talk all about the whole food plant-based diet. What it is, what it's supposed to do, and whether it's worth the effort. I just want to point out that I'm not recommending any particular diet. What I am going to do is explain how this particular diet works and what evidence it has or doesn't have to back it up. If you watched my videos before, you'll know that I don't really promote any one diet, and hopefully you'll understand why after this. Let's get started. So, the easiest way to explain what a whole food plant-based diet, and let's just get this out of the way, a WFPB, just to make it short, is probably to explain the similarities and differences with the vegan diet, because the two terms are often used interchangeably, even though they are most definitely not the same. So for anyone who's been living under a rock for the past 20 years or so, and don't worry, I realize some of you weren't even alive 20 years ago, according to the Vegan Society, veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. Now, if you think about that, veganism is much more than a diet. It's a philosophy and a way of living. This means a vegan's ultimate purpose is to prevent the exploitation of animals. So this means no leather made from animal skins, no wool made from sheep's fur, no honey made from the labor of bees, and no cosmetics or toiletries that have been tested on animals. A vegan diet avoids anything that comes from animals. No meat, milk, eggs, or even honey, like I just said, because veganism is all about protecting animals. Veganism has nothing to do with nutrition. A whole food plant-based diet, on the other hand, is completely food focused, and as such has a lot more to do with nutrition. Although there's some ideology in there, and we'll get to that in a moment. The thing is, a whole food plant-based diet doesn't have a set definition, which I think is a good thing. But it has a few common guidelines which make it more of a dietary pattern. A dietary pattern is different from a specific diet because a specific diet often has fixed rules, whereas a pattern is more flexible and has guidelines that you follow along with instead of having to stick to rigidly. Firstly, as the name implies, the emphasis is whole, unprocessed, or minimally processed plant-based foods. What does that even mean? Well, think of fresh fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, and legumes like beans, peas, and lentils. These are supposed to make up all, or at least the vast majority of the diet. So far, so good, right? At its heart, the WFPB diet is an inclusive diet. An inclusive diet is a diet that focuses on including specific foods. The opposite of an inclusive diet is an exclusive diet, which focuses on excluding specific foods that you should avoid. So for example, a keto diet focuses on excluding carbs. A gluten-free diet focuses on excluding cereals and products that contain gluten. And a vegan diet focuses on excluding animal products. So there's the big difference between a whole food plant-based diet and a vegan diet. The next points are really all secondary to what I've just mentioned, but help to clarify what a whole food plant-based diet is. In a WFPB, there is often a focus on the quality of the foods eaten. Like I said earlier, this means there's a big focus on unprocessed or minimally processed foods. Basically, most food on a whole food plant-based diet should look like you would find it in a field. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, etc. Or in the case of minimally processed foods, they'll often contain very few ingredients and will have had simple processing like grinding grains into flour or nuts into nut butter. There's often a focus on locally produced, in-season produce and even organic produce too, although that doesn't seem to be a requirement in the WFPB diet. As the focus of a whole food plant-based diet is getting in loads of unprocessed plant food, that means that it inherently reduces or limits the amount of processed foods like refined flour and flour products like white bread, white pasta and white rice, or refined sugar, processed oils, and highly processed foods in general. It also potentially reduces the amount of animal products like meat, eggs, fish, and dairy, and especially processed meats like sausage, pepperoni, and other cured meats. At this point, you're probably asking, well, what's the point? Are there any benefits over a vegan diet or a regular diet? Well, let's look into that. Firstly, there's something really important to bear in mind. The average diet in the UK or the United States is pretty damn awful. In fact, a recent study showed that almost 60% of all calories eaten in the United States come from ultra-processed foods. And these are foods that are made from already highly processed ingredients like refined flour, refined sugar, and refined fats and oils. This means people eat a lot of processed foods that are high in calories and low in nutrients like fiber, vitamins, minerals, and protein. Basically, almost any diet that someone tries is going to be better than the standard American diet, which is ironically called the SAD, or SAD for short. And because they're tasty and not very filling, ultra-processed foods can lead people to overeat and gain weight in the long term. And don't assume that diets outside America are much better. Ultra-processed foods make up over 50% of the diet in many countries in the developed world, including the UK. And that 50% is an average, meaning there are some people who eat a lot more. A whole food plant-based diet encourages people to eat a lot of the foods that are currently lacking in the standard American or UK diet. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, these are all foods that provide a huge variety of beneficial nutrients like fiber, phytonutrients like polyphenols, vitamins and minerals, all of which are associated with better health and lower levels of chronic disease like diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. On top of that, whole food plant-based diets can help people feel fuller for longer, and people end up eating fewer calories overall, which can help to reduce the risk of overeating and gaining weight. In fact, a lot of diets and dietary patterns like the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, or diets in blue zones where people are known to live long, healthy lives like in Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, or Nicosia in Greece, are all quite similar to the whole food plant-based diet and have a huge amount of research backing their health benefits. And remember what I said earlier about a vegan diet being about protecting animals and not about nutrition? Well, this is why I think that the whole food plant-based diet is much better from a nutritional perspective. As a vegan diet focuses on eliminating animal products, you could have a diet made up of ultra-processed foods like Oreos and fizzy drinks, and it would still be completely vegan. In fact, there is research that shows that plant-based diets based on ultra-processed foods lead to poor health, whereas plant-based diets focusing on whole foods lead to much better health. So remember, just because a food has a vegan label, that says absolutely nothing about whether it's a healthy food or not. Now, so far, the whole food plant-based diet sounds pretty great, right? Well, here's the thing. As this dietary pattern doesn't have much or any animal products, which can be very nutritionally dense, it can potentially run into the same problems as a vegan diet, such as deficiencies in vitamin B12 and minerals like calcium, iron, and zinc. That's why any diet that cuts out entire food groups should be planned well to make sure you're getting all the nutrients you need. But does a plant-based diet mean you need to cut out all animal products? While there are definitely some people who will disagree with me on this, and I can imagine that the comment section on this video is going to be fun, I would say no. I think that a whole foods plant-based diet can include whole animal foods too. Remember, the whole food plant-based diet is not a set diet. It's a dietary pattern that aims to include lots of whole plant foods as its main guideline. From a nutritional perspective, it makes sense to include some nutrient-dense animal products to supplement some of the nutrients that are harder to get on a whole foods plant-based diet. Nutrients like protein from eggs, dairy and lean meat, iron from lean meat and eggs, calcium and iodine from dairy products, and long-chain omega-3 fatty acids from oily fish. Depending on how you interpret it, all of these foods, which are whole foods, can be part of a whole foods plant-based diet, as long as whole plants make up the majority of the diet, right? Like I said, I don't follow or recommend any particular type of diet, but you could describe my diet as whole foods plant-based, as the majority of my food is whole plants. But I eat everything: meat, eggs, fish, even processed foods, just not in excess. It's easy for people to become extremists or even militant about nutrition, and that's something that I really like to avoid. I hope this video has helped you realize that a whole food plant-based diet has a huge amount of health benefits, and that it doesn't mean you need to give up animal foods to achieve it. In fact, plant and animal foods can complement each other really well in a balanced diet. As always, if you have any questions about whole food plant-based diets, let me know in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe to the Myprotein YouTube channel for more great evidence-based nutrition information.